I wake up every morning, get my coffee, and look at some dashboards. That's the kind of
Oh
leader
my
I am.
God.
And
You're like my best friend now. Hey everyone, welcome to Dev Interrupted. I'm your host, Dan Lyons, and today I'm joined by Rukmini Reddy, VP of Engineering at Slack. Rukmini, thanks for joining us today.
it's great to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you here. Super pumped to have you here. Now, you've been a VP of engineering for several years now. What led you to become a developer and now an engineering leader? How did you even get on this career path?
That's a great question. 8, that is how old I was. I was sitting in my convent in India in needlepoint, and I hated it. And I remember a teacher coming over and saying, "We're opening a new computer lab, and do you want to try that out? And you don't have to do needlepoint if you go there." And I raised my hand. I was the only one of the 60 girls who raised my hand to do it. And I've never looked back. I loved Logo. That was like my first introduction to programming. And that's when I knew I wanted to be an engineer. So being a developer, being an engineer has always been a dream of mine ever since I was a little kid.
What a great opportunity. So needlepoint's like you're sewing something.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they said, who wants to leave this sewing area and come and work on the computer? Good thing you raised your hand.
Yes, I did. It just opened the door to so many more opportunities for me. And I just kept going. I did my bachelor's in computer engineering back home in India. And that's how I moved to the United States to get my graduate degree in computer engineering. And
Awesome.
thus began my career as a developer. You also asked about how I became an engineering leader,
Yeah.
which was maybe like an accident or maybe luck. I really loved being a developer. I was a senior engineering contributor in my organization, and a CTO I reported to then came to me and said, "You seem to be good at this people stuff. Do you want to try to be an engineering leader?" And I went through all the stages of grief ICs usually go through when someone mentions the word management. And I was like, I don't know, I'm going to lose my technical chops. I'm going to lose my technical skills. I'm
Yeah.
going to become irrelevant.
Scary.
It's scary, and people stuff is hard.
Yeah.
And he assured me that if I hate it, I can always go back, which looking back now was quite advanced for the time in which we were living then. And I tried it and I never looked back. And I find this combination of people and product and engineering and technology B2B so fascinating. So love it. That's how I got into this.
Yeah, you never look back. You only went forward. One thing that I see with successful people that come on our podcast is when they're presented with an opportunity, it seems like they're always saying yes, even though they're afraid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be resonating with you as well for your career.
100%. I think it's really hard. Like most of us feel a lot of fear and a lot of courage at the same time. It's when you have new opportunities. In my case, when I moved to this country as an immigrant and I got on a plane, my very first plane ride just was a plane taking me away from everything and everyone I had known. It's crazy, but scary. But in moments like that, like you lean into the opportunity and you push through it. And that's when like you learn and you grow, and growing is uncomfortable.
Yeah, very uncomfortable. The whole time it feels painful until you get to a certain plateau and you look back and say, oh, I've just grown. But the whole time, it's at least for me, I'm a little bit afraid. It hurts a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen. Are people thinking I'm doing a good job? I've never done this before. But yeah, you just got to push through. I think I read an article where you talk about this.
Yes, I do. I think it's so important, especially to the next generation out there, to know that most successful people have been very uncomfortable for most of their lives. And especially as a woman and a woman of color, I think good old imposter syndrome rears its ugly head every single time I'm in an uncomfortable situation. And it's okay. It's okay. It's something that we all have to work with every day. And I write the blog in hope that somebody is reassured knowing they're not alone when they read saying that, oh, you've been through something similar. And hopefully inspire a few next generation engineering leaders.
Yeah, it's a great blog. We can put the link to it in the pod. Are you doing any mentoring or anything like that for like up and coming women or anyone?
I actually, in the past, pre-pandemic, have mentored at Hackbright Academy, which is for non-traditional women who are trying to break into tech. I have mentored at Women Entering and Staying in Tech, which is an organization where you mentor early career engineers. I was a Plato mentor for engineering managers for a long time. And this past year and a half, I have concentrated all my efforts of mentoring within Slack. So
that's great. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Awesome job supporting the community. I'm going to fast forward us to your time at Slack. So last July, you joined Slack. It was obviously mid-pandemic. I think some of your previous startups, you were also a remote first or in a remote first company. But what was it like joining Slack? You joined as a VP. So you're joining Slack, leadership position, and fully remote world. Whoa.
It was interesting. And I had been a remote first leader for the previous 2 years. So I joke now, it's like I had a premonition of the times to come, but I clearly none of it did. But what's interesting, even in that position, was I got to meet the founding team and several key members and the board in person. So in the interview process, I actually met real humans, and then we transitioned into a kind of a semi-remote world. The team was still located. We had an office in San Francisco, so I would go in there once in a while. So while there was remote, technically, it was a very different kind of environment. And then fast forward to last July, when we were all like, I think, dealing with a crisis after crisis. I know right before we began recording, we were discussing orange skies in California.
Yeah, the fires.
It was complete insanity, so much trauma in society and injustice. And it was so hard to wrap our head around all of this. And here I was interviewing for a leadership position. And what I found so unique, I was interviewing at multiple places at the same time. And what I found unique about Slack was the humanity of the people I was interacting with was second to none. And I was like, this is interesting. And obviously the challenge of the platform, the product, the scale. I'm a huge Slack fan. I'm like a fangirl of Slack. I've used Slack for 6 years. And there was once in my past life where I purchased Slack for my entire organization on my credit card. And then my CFO was like, did you just buy an SaaS software without asking? I was like, you have to pry this out of my cold dead hands because it's changed the way my team communicates. And so I had a lot of like excitement about the product itself. And when I joined, that humanity that I experienced coming in was just amplified and magnified on the other side. For example, like one of my team members created an emoji for me on my first day, and I show up and everyone's like, Rukmini is here, and this Rukmini emoji. It's such a small gesture, but when you're joining as a leader, we talked about imposter syndrome. You're nervous. You have met nobody in real life. For all, somebody would be 6 foot tall, or maybe they're a hologram. Who knows? Like,
it could be. We're not sure. Yeah. Everything that I'm doing is remote, so I don't even know if I'm really taught. Like you might be.
So what's real? And it's just there were so many gestures where this community just like, you belong here is something they say at Slack, and it was a wonderful experience. Difficult? Yes, because I think it was difficult for all leaders. And especially as you're onboarding, you have to be so intentional about how you're spending your time, how you're building relationships with people. So there are a lot of challenges as well. And I think I flex muscles, leadership muscles I didn't know I had. Like when you go skiing for the first time and your legs are awake and you're like, what is that? I didn't know that existed. It's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful.
That's amazing. I don't know if you're going to know this, but how do you think that Slack kind of built that culture, like the type of people with that great welcoming, humanity driven? Is it in the hiring process or?
Yeah, it's Slack's core values. I think we read a lot about core values in other companies that you read it on the career page and it makes like you join them and you're like, what? It doesn't exist. But I think a lot of people embody those core values. So empathy is one of our core values, and it really comes through, right? Humility, being smart, being collaborative. These are our core values. And I think they're embedded into all our processes, our hiring, our onboarding, and our culture.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. To learn a little bit about your organization, you joined as VP engineering for the
Yes.
platform. Is there multiple VPs or?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yes. So Slack is organized into the product engineering organization, the platform engineering organization, the security organization, and the infrastructure core organization, code engineering organization. So I lead the developer platform engineering organization.
Okay, developer platform. So what, just so we can get a mindset around it, what value do you, I'm using Slack all the time. Obviously, probably everyone listening to this is, I like using Slack to talk to my family. Like my parents want to talk to me. Can you just Slack me? I have what it works with. So what, like for Slack platform engineering, can you give an example?
Yeah, I lead teams. So every time you interact with the bot, like that Slack platform, right? If you use Workflow Builder, that's Slack platform. So I lead teams that provide like first-party developer experience. So first parties are defined as you're in a large enterprise organization and you're building integrations, custom code to make your business processes efficient on Slack. That's a first-party developer. So I lead teams that provide value and product for first-party developers. I also lead the team that builds Slack's no-code workflow builder. And then I lead teams that provide third-party integrations and partnerships and for our third-party developers. So the PagerDuties of the world and Miro and Polly and Donut, all these apps that we've all come to love. So that's basically the purview of the team that I lead.
And Linear B. No, so we have a Slack bot now. We're calling it Worker B that goes out to all developers and basically helps developers get work done and save time. So I think in that situation, would we be a third party? We're interacting with your third party team to make that bot happen. Okay, cool. So when you joined, how many were in your organization? Because that's a lofty title.
We had 60 engineers last year, and we grew pretty significantly in the past year.
Where are you at now?
I think we've grown about 35% in the past year.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did you approach that growth and the remote hiring? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, it's hard. There's so much competition for great talent right now. I think it's top of mind for a lot of engineering leaders. And I think especially remote hiring and onboarding, some principles are like being intentional, being empathetic, and being data-driven are super important because some of the pre-pandemic processes just don't hold. For example, I just read a post on Blind a few days ago that said someone was complaining about, oh, I need to interview, and it's hard to believe this. They're asking me to come in for an in-person 5-round interview.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, how and why, when there's so much demand for talent, would somebody be willing to do that? And this is how it just makes no sense. And it's hard.
I'm surprised you'd get any candidate.
Yeah, you get any candidate. And if you think about it, like having a digital first interview process is extremely critical. And if you don't, you're just going to be a laggard and lose out on all this exceptional talent that's out there.
Yeah. Is there anything like any tricks that you've learned or anything in particular that you could share about the Slack engineering interview process that you found noteworthy?
I think very data-driven. Just the practices are very data-driven. I think we check ourselves for bias at every stage of the interview process. We have really extensive interview training for our people who will be interviewers. We embody our core values when we show up to interview, like we're empathetic. We do shared PRs with you to see how you respond and how you collaborate. It's extremely important to us.
Oh, that's cool. You go back and forth on PRs?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Nice. So, and most importantly, like even the way we coordinate our process, right? Like Slack is where we do our work. So we have offer channels. We talk about how we can best support our candidates through the process. And we are very welcoming. The minute you sign an offer, like you will receive just a love bomb from us in a way that we are so excited for you to join us. And these are the small differences. Yes, we're a great organization to work with and you want to join Slack Engineering, and our culture really comes through in our process. And I've had interviews in the past year where people are like, I'm sorry, my child is just cartwheeling in the back. So being human in that process is really important.
Be human and send love bombs. I love that's what we need to do. Yeah. Perfect. So a little bit about how your engineering organization works. So let's say I'm just like doing math. Maybe you have 70 or 80 on your team now, maybe 80 on your team, something like that.
Yeah.
Are there any practices that you're imposing? Are people working in Kanban or Scrum? Is there anything that you're saying, hey, we need to work a certain way or not? Like, how do you approach that as a VP?
Yeah, I think something about how you work is so personal to an individual team. And I personally I agree with structure overall. I think data is at the center of everything I do. So I love me some like Jira metrics and dashboards and analytics. That's my jam.
Okay, you're going to love linear B. Okay, we'll do a whole thing together. Okay, you love you some metrics. Great.
I love me some metrics. I wake up every morning, get my coffee and look at some dashboards. That's the kind of leader
Oh my God.
am.
You're like my best friend now. Okay, we're going to hang out in Zoom after this. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a data nerd. While I need that visibility to understand how productive we are being and where blockers are, I think it's the goal of finding this is not to be like, I impose something on my team. I don't care for that word in a way that it's so much about bottoms up on how the team executes and how they like to work with each other. You asked a question about, are we Scrum or Kanban?
Yeah.
Some of my teams choose to do Kanban because it works better for them. And some choose to use Scrum. However, at the end of the day, the metrics they report on, like a burn down chart of epics or tasks or bugs, that doesn't change. So we actually our team is really good about shared view of reality. That's what we call it. And our engineering leadership team and engineering managers on platform, we actually spend our weekly sync first actually reviewing metrics that matter to us. So for example, were there any recent incidents? Like what's the status of those reviews? Like where are security tickets? Is there something that we need to focus on? How are we doing with our bug backlog? How are we doing with our Zendesk support ticket volumes and how we need to respond to our customers? How are our project burn downs? And that's where we begin. And then we continue the conversation. But the data is not used in a way saying, oh my God, your team's not doing well. It's more, oh, there's a pattern here, which is interesting. Can we explore this together to understand more?
I 100% with you. Data that's used for performance management does not work.
Oh, 100%. Data is only half the story. The other half is context.
Now, data that's used for transparency and aligning on a reality and making observations at a team level works really well. And of course, I think Slack has the right culture. You have to have the right culture to back up that data-driven approach. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of companies do that now, and it really does work. Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite set of engineering related metrics? Do you have your favorite metric, anything like that?
One of my favorite metrics, and it's a metric that matters because in the end of the day, engineering organizations our sole responsibility is in service of our customers. And one of my favorite metrics is cycle time, right?
Yay.
Yeah, so the time it takes for the product and software we're building to get into the hands of our customer. And it's a great metric because, again, we're driving business outcomes, we're enabling our customers, and that's our role as engineering. And that's one of my favorite metrics. I love created versus resolved charts.
What is that one? Say it again.
Created versus resolved charts. For example, it can be used to like deduce trends. So how many bugs have we created versus resolved? So are the number of bugs in our system getting ahead of us? Do we need to keep up? So the green line needs to stay ahead of the red line.
It's like, sometimes people call it like a CFD, a cumulative flow diagram, which is showing how much work is coming in progress, how much are we completing, and you're looking at a rate. It's a rate. It's a very important one because you can see if it's getting out of control before, oh my God, there's an explosion.
So much of it, sometimes it's an indicator that the team has too much on their plate. You need to focus and you need to maybe actually have a really tough discussion about what are we dropping? Like, what are we not doing? And that is a really hard thing to discuss, because we all want to do all the things, right? And it's hard on product teams to say, what are we not doing? But that's what we use that metric for, to figure out, are we doing too much? Do we need to take a pause and actually stop doing some of the things?
Well, saying what you're not going to do, I find to be a key trait in great product engineering leadership. Everyone wants to do. We're developers, so it's like fun to take on more. But what you do see in terms of that metric, cycle time will actually get worse as your WIP, so your work in progress, increases. Because I got too many things, I'm jumping around, I can't get anything done. It clogs the system. So that,
and actually the other metric I have is epics per engineer, or work in progress per engineer is the other favorite metric.
Yeah, WIP per engineer. Yeah.
Yes.
We're tracking that in Linear B, again, from the perspective of, okay, we can go have a conversation now and let's take work off your plate so that we can be more effective. I love it. I love that you love metrics. This is awesome. What we're doing, I don't know if you looked it up. You can look at linearb.io. It's actually all these interesting metrics for engineering leaders and for developers to improve productivity. So everything that you were talking about around cycle time and time to merge and PRs, and that's exactly
awesome. Yeah, curious to see how engineering metrics are being recorded and what's the behind the scenes. So
I think we have something pretty innovative going on.
Especially your Slack bot. I'm really curious to learn how that.
So we call the Slack bot Worker Bee.
Okay.
And we have a 3-pillar approach to how we're talking about Linear B and what we provide. The first pillar is, how are you doing on your projects? Investment. So how many people are working on each project? Is the project on time? The burn down charts, the CFDs, what type of work are we doing? Whether it's new value or bugs. So you have this project pillar. Then the second pillar is all of those observability type metrics, the single pane of glass. Are we all on this? Do we have a shared view of reality, as you would say? So cycle time, change failure rate, deployment frequency, where are bottlenecks within our delivery pipeline. We'll provide that for every single team on all of your teams and for you.
You connect to Atlas.
Yeah, we connect to all different Git providers, project management systems, of course, Slack for communication.
It's very ambitious.
And then our third pillar is the Slack bot, the Worker Bee.
That's awesome.
And all that is like every alert that we do or action is saying, for the developer, how could we take work off of their plate or make them more effective?
How many users do you have on Worker Bee?
Thousands.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Worker Bee is cool because they just automatically sign up. It just spreads throughout the organization.
That's great.
So moving on to our next topic around leadership and management. And I wanted to dive in there a little bit with you because, you've had let's be honest, like a fantastic career so far. Let's see, I think you're going to do probably many more things, but you're at an unbelievable company now. What do you believe makes you a successful engineering leader?
Engineering leadership is so complex. It's not one thing. It's not like you can be a good technologist and necessarily be a good engineering leader. I think if you think of it as a Venn diagram, right? Like I love diagrams and data. So you can tell I'm an engineer at heart. So you start plotting out a Venn diagram, and then you have a Venn diagram for technology and product and process and people. And I think good engineering leaders are ones who put people at the center of everything. And it's having a people first mindset, and those who are, I think so much about my role is to cascade purpose and cascading vision. I think that's what makes a successful engineering leader.
Yeah, I agree how complex that Venn diagram can be, because it always feels like you're trying to balance so many different things. You're saying people at the center. Is there any like intentional things that you do as a leader, like either day to day or week to week, that say, okay, that are like people first initiatives, or what does that mean to you?
Oh, yes. People are like, I think I talk about this to people I'm mentoring. I've done this exercise for several years now. Like, I know what my core values are as a leader. I love Brené Brown and I love her books, and she recommended writing down your core values. And when I did write them down several years ago, love and courage were my core values. And that's how I that's how I show up at work. And so much about what I do is rooted in deep care for my people that I lead. I take it as a significant responsibility. Things I do, for example, if it's your first meeting with me, I would ask you questions like, what does support look like from me? What does respect mean for you in this working relationship? and I ground myself and that in that conversation. How do you like to receive feedback? How do you like to give feedback? How do you like to be celebrated? These are things I ask everyone I either report to me or I'm going to work closely with. And I think they're so important to establish like rules of engagement for that one-to-one relationship, because you meet people where they are and then magic happens. High growth, high performance comes through a foundation of trust. So trust building is extremely important for me. When I join new teams, I make it my highest priority. So in Stack, for example, I spent 60 days just meeting everybody possible and then asking everyone, saying, who are 5 people you think I should meet? And then I met, and I spent most of my time relationship building and understanding the context of why things exist or why people are doing a certain thing and who they are before I come out and say, these are my grandiose ideas and vision and technology and product, and let's scrap everything you're doing, which is, I feel still some of our leaders approach it that way, and it's not healthy, and trust is at the center of everything.
What you mentioned, the questions that you asked during the one-on-one, that's coming from a framework that you've read before, or is it your own, like what was it?
So I have 2 different templates that I use. One is a first meeting template, which is when you meet someone for the first time, what are some great questions to ask? It's, I think, published on my blog. That's a lot of like me learning, writing down things that have worked for me and reading blogs, like picking up good questions from different blogs. So it's culminated over several years. However, the one-on-one template that I have, which also works really well and it's very effective, I read this book called Fierce Conversations many years ago.
Yeah, that was it. Fierce Conversations. I read that on your book.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. And they had this template in there, and I've taken it and used it so successfully. So highly recommend that book for those who are willing to like make candor at the forefront of all their conversation. And let me warn you, it is uncomfortable, but that's where growth happens.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Let me hit you with a harder question. What's the worst mistake that you've made as an engineering leader that you were able to then learn from?
Oh, gosh. Oh, so many mistakes. I'm trying to figure out which ones. This is hard because I have a big Rolodex of bad mistakes I've made.
Mistakes. Try to pull one out that you think someone could learn from that is listening here.
I did make a mistake several years ago, and this one struck me hard because it was something about people, and I felt blindsided by how I showed up. There was an engineer several skip levels down, and he was not performing well. I was just like, I'm very data driven. I can sometimes be very execution focused, which was a blind spot. And this was like a few years ago. And I was just like, yeah, performance management, let's go. And I just was nudging the manager to just go through with it. And this was a team in Ukraine. And I used to visit them every 3 months. So between my visit and this person's performance dropped, and I didn't speak to them, I didn't reach out. I think I was busy. I didn't get to understand context. And then I showed up, and then they were getting better, but not getting better. And can you get it better? So it was like all over the place. And then I just sat down with them, and I'm like, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? Why are you struggling? And that person just broke down and said something like, apparently in Ukraine, the government was trying to like take them out of their home. The father was in the military, and the government was trying to seize their home. And he was going to court every day to keep their home.
Oh my God.
I just felt terrible. And I thought that was a mistake I learned a lot from. And it was something I did, was extremely apologetic. I missed it. I could have been more empathetic. And that's where I'm like, the note I took to self was like, assume best intent and learn to ask more. And we overcame it. We said, you know what, let's support you. Maybe let's get you a leave so that you can go focus on your problem right now, and not actually magnify it by putting pressure of performance improvement on your work. And the person stayed, and they flourished, and they did incredibly well. So all's well, but it was a mistake, and I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. First off, I love Ukraine. I've also had some great engineers are there, had an engineering team over there. But I think the lesson is the one that you told before, where if you ask the right questions, you make room for them to come with that information. Because that person was hiding, probably didn't want to share that. I don't know if I should share what's going on in my personal life. You found it out. Now you addressed it and they flourish. That's fantastic. I want to move us to an area around scaling. So you've scaled a few engineering organizations. You're scaling your current organization at Slack right now. What advice do you have for engineering leaders who are building and leading teams while trying to aggressively hyper growth scale?
Yeah, I think I alluded to this too earlier. High performance comes from trust. So if you want a high performing, super scaling organization, you need to make sure you have a foundation of trust in your organization, because trusting your people to hire right, trusting your people to do the right processes is extremely important as you hyperscale. So why, if you're especially in a hypergrowth startup, you may be like, but I don't have time for trust building. You can keep going and your pack of cards is just going to fall. It's not going to last because your foundation is not strong. And people can get stressed out in these like supercharged hyperscaling environments. And if you have high trust and you can take a pause and be empathetic for your people, I think your organization can scale really well, because when you operate from a place of trust, you empower so many others to be able to make decisions and move a lot faster.
Yeah, you need other people to do the work for you a little bit, and trust goes a long ways to enable them to do. And I love how you said that's the foundation, because I did it when you were talking. I had an image in my head of like crumbling a house, like the foundation's not good, but you're trying to build on top of this crumbling house. It's never going to work.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where data also comes in, having data, because emotions can run high when you're trying to go really fast, and rooting yourself in a foundation of trust plus having data that can actually bring about a shared view of reality. Again, I keep going back to this because I have some tenets of like successful cross-functional partnerships, successful organizations, and one of them is having a shared view of reality. Do we all agree that things are great, or do we all think things suck right now? Like,
yeah. I love that. Yeah. So I've been saying a lot of what we're doing at Linear B is around data. We run our company in a data-driven way. I knew I never had those words together of a shared view of reality, but it totally makes sense, because a lot of meetings that we'll come to, okay, let's say that we're having a problem in a certain area of engineering or the business. Okay, I'm going to align us around the meeting. The first thing that we do is align around the data to say, let's present the data that shows what's happening with this problem. Does everyone agree that this data does represent it? Yes or no? Because sometimes there's some context there. And when you get a yes around the room, then I find the next part of the meeting is so much more productive. But if you're in a situation where, because you have that shared view of reality, if you're in a situation where, oh, someone's looking at some data over here, this person's looking at another piece of data, the third person's not looking at any data, how do you come? It's harder to get to a resolution.
Yes, I think, what you said applies to a meeting, but can also apply to a relationship that you're building at work, right? So some things that I've had amazing relationships with my product partners my entire career. Like, I remember being in a conference a long time ago where they were like, how many of you have had bad relationships with your product partners? And almost everybody raised their hand, all the engineering leaders. And then they said, okay, let's reverse the question. How many of you had great relationships with your product partners? And I think I was one of 3 people. And I think because it's hard, like the healthy tension between product and engineering, it's not easy. And one of the things that work really well for us is, even here at Slack, is like having that shared view of reality. Do we agree we are doing too much or too little together? The second thing is flow of information. Flow, give me your context, I give you my context. And together, the end state is shared success. It's impossible for an engineering organization to be, especially in product engineering, to be successful without the product itself being successful. Our success is shared success.
When you said that, I had a small story that comes to mind. So I'm a co-founder. I'm one of the co-founders at Linear B. I'm in LA. Ori's in Israel. Ori is our CEO and the other co-founder. So my partner, we have a founder marriage. And there's a lot of things going on in the company, and we're trying to quickly align with each other. And just remember, like, for example, we were talking about the cumulative flow diagrams before the whip. I was saying to him, hey, the support issues seem to be increasing here, and I don't know that we're keeping up. And I was saying, hey, I think we need to hire more. And he was saying, oh, I don't really know that I believe that. I don't think we do need to hire. And we decided to align around the CFD that was showing support issues coming in, how quickly were we responding and addressing them. And it turned out there was something in between. Like the data showed us what they are increasing, but I don't know yet that we need to have a hire. And for example, we decide, hey, let's open a rec, but we're going to hire next quarter, 3 months from now. That's when we think the data shows that person could be fully utilized. That's just like a small example of how to align really quickly around data, because before it was a little bit argumentative. It was like my opinion, his opinion, what should we do?
Oh, 100%. And this is where like data plus context, right, equals success, because you're able to meet people halfway. And so a lot of it is compromising, but also being able to, I think, prioritize. Like you are operating as, a startup. It does like ruthless prioritization. It doesn't change no matter what scale you're at. You are going to want to do a lot of things, and you can't do all the things.
Yeah. You can never do. Choosing all the things is always the wrong move. If you're not saying no to something, you're probably going to get yourself in trouble.
No is extremely important.
Yeah. Last question in this area. So another thing that we're pretty big into at Linear B, you were talking about Slack workflows, but we have a lot of automation that helps our developers, I guess, get that single pane of glass. And what do I mean by that? Showing where the code is in the development life cycle. Is someone waiting for a PR to be reviewed? Has someone requested changes? It all flows. We're using Linear B on Slack. It all flows through the bots, through Slack, keeps every engineer in loop. This automation, it really helps with cycle time. And I was wondering, at an organization your size, like, what are you using for automation, or do you have anything that's helping your developers as you scale?
Yeah, we have an incredible developer productivity organization. So there's a lot of people in Slack enabling our developers to go faster every day. We have a really great build and release team. Like we measure, I think one of the core metrics, which is based on our culture and what I told you, is PR merge time. Like how much time are our colleagues waiting on us?
Yeah, from PR open to merge?
Yeah, open to merge. Like how much time are we waiting on each other? And considering life is happening to each one of us, and there's sometimes in this last year, there's so much like trauma that we're all dealing with. It's good to know who's depending on you. And if you're unable to get to them, how can you tag somebody else in so the PR can move forward? And that's enough metric that I think we have a lot of automation built around into our entire development lifecycle. Yes, obviously there's always room to improve and always room to go faster, but we have a pretty incredible team.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned trust is one of the foundations for scaling. I think on like the technical side, having that automation in place is also foundational for scaling. So that as you're adding more and more developers, you have this kind of foundational infrastructure that will help get work done. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be as afraid, oh, it's going to break if I add 10 more developers. No, you have automation. It's going to keep working. Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing on that. Our final topic here is around Slack. So Slack is obviously like a massive leader in technology, asynchronous communication. So I want to be sure we have a chance to talk about what's next for the Slack platform. I think everybody wants to hear. So what are you working on? What's going on in Slack?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be in Slack and on Slack platform. In Slack platform, we're always investing in our developer community and our builders. And we recently relaunched slackcommunity.com, and we are we are in our largest ever re-architecting of the platform. So you'll be hearing more about these. We have exciting announcements coming up this October at Slack Frontiers. So stay tuned to see all the exciting work happening in Slack platform.
Okay, great. And I think everyone knows you got the Salesforce acquisition going on here or finalized. Can you talk at all of what that would mean for the future of the Slack platform?
Yeah, this is an exciting milestone for Slack and for platform. I think it presents as an incredible opportunity to create a digital HQ to connect our employees, customers, and partners with each other, and apps they use every day. This digital first work from anywhere world means that we all have a once in a generation opportunity to rethink how and where we work. Together with Salesforce, we are creating an open and extensive ecosystem that we will deliver the next generation of digital first apps and workflows. And this should enable our developers to work quickly and efficiently and develop the tools they need for this new way of working.
Is there any like semi-secret or interesting project that your team, you're doing the third-party apps. I think you said first party, you're doing the platform stuff. Is there anything like cool that you're doing there for developers or for anything interesting you could share?
The acquisition's only just been finalized, so we're all digging in and we'll have a lot more to say in the near future.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll have to bring you back. Once the information is disclosed, we can then dive into it. Won't be as secret, and you can come on and tell us some of the inner workings here. Does that sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Awesome. This has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for taking us through not only your career journey, but some of the practices that you're doing in Slack and scaling. And thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dan. Again, it was an absolute pleasure. And we are hiring across many roles in Slack, product design and engineering. So please go look up our careers page. You can always follow me on LinkedIn or on Medium and my blog to learn more about practices I have to share. But we are hiring for a lot of open roles and would love to hear from our developers. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think we learned the amazing technical culture that's going on at Slack. So everyone make sure to check out the careers page. And I'm sure, Rukmini, you would not mind if people reached out to you with questions on LinkedIn. So be sure to do that as well. A quick reminder for our listeners, if you haven't already reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts, please take 60 seconds to do. Reviews are super crucial for our show to get discovered. Also, be sure to join the Dev Interrupted Discord community. That's where we keep this type of conversation going all week long. And anything that we discussed on the pod today, you can find in the links in the description below. And thank you one more time for coming on the pod. It was awesome chatting with you.
Thank you, Dan.